Few things in this world are more terrifying than the unknown, and few directors have tapped into that fear as effectively as Steven Spielberg. Join us as we take a deep dive into the early works of one of filmmaking's greatest directors on this episode of Script or Screen. Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christopher Kitchen, and here I'm with my co-host, Zach Strackman.
Hello.
Zach, how are you doing today?
I am doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing really well. We have an interesting topic today.
We do.
With the works of one of the great directors of our time, and of actually a time before us as well, I feel. Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Steven Anthony Spielberg. That's not his middle name.
I don't know what his middle name is. At least with the, advent of COVID-19, we don't know. It's up in the air what's being actually released in theaters these days. But he was scheduled to release his remake of West Side Story this holiday season on December 18th. Happens to be his birthday as well as mine. Fun fact.
Do you guys feel quite connected?
Oh, all the time. I call him up. I'm like Spielberg, Stevie.
Stevie, no. My boy, happy birthday.
But I think that presents a good opportunity for us to look back. It's actually one more thing. It's actually this year is the 45th anniversary of the film Jaws releasing into theaters, and changing the face of cinema.
That is true. Talk about the first blockbuster ever. I really want to get into that, but first I feel like we just have a couple of housekeeping things to get out of the way. Firstly, I don't know if we mentioned this on the first episode of the podcast, but this podcast takes a dive into films and television and the makings of all type of media. And as we go along and do these things, it's important to remember that spoilers will come about.
Yeah.
And hopefully our audience understands and everybody will realize that if you're talking about movies and you talk about shows, then you're going to get into some spoilery territory and all the like. So if that wasn't said before, just going to remind everybody now.
On top of that, I just like to also add that all the opinions expressed today and in any of the podcasts we do, they're just our opinions. If we say a movie that we watched was bad and you like it, you know what? We're not telling you not to like it, and it's great. If we like a movie that you hate, it's just our opinion.
That's why we give the facts. That's what. Oh, I guess facts as presented to us. But yeah, I agree. Actually, no, that's a lie. I speak for everybody in the world.
You are the voice of this generation.
Don't tell anybody that you said that.
Right. But you know what's great is that today we are talking about a couple of movies that we both really like, and I don't really think I know anyone who doesn't like these movies, who has seen them.
I'm thinking about if I really, really like these. I don't think I'd hate them. All right, listen, before we get into all these movies, I want to go over a couple other things, because there's a lot to get into here. With Duel, our two movies we're taking a look at today is Steven Spielberg's television feature from 1971, Duel, and his first feature-length film, really.
Actually, his first was Sugarland Express.
Oh, Sugarland Express was made for TV or the big screen?
I believe it was big screen. I could look that up. No, it was in theaters. But we're talking, Steven Spielberg's first film, Duel, and
Jaws.
His earliest massive success, Jaws. Yeah.
But before I get into those, I need to make a couple of mentions to some things we saw last week. I say last episode, excuse me. Just kind of, bookending some of the Christopher Nolan stuff. I did mention that there was an article that Interstellar had made an exceptional amount of money in its re-release into the Chinese market, and that actually capped out to another 1.69 million, adding to about, what is it, 16.7 million, $0.7 million in its lifetime in the foreign markets, if you will.
That is
So,
a lot of money.
especially for a movie that came out several years ago, being re-released into theaters now, it's pretty impressive, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean it's a testament to the film itself.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like it's pretty much, Christopher Nolan's best movie. No, I mean, in my humble opinion, I just really liked it, and I thought I'd bring that up. And interestingly enough, there was another gentleman who actually released a video almost within the same week as us recording our episode that I wanted to give a brief shout out that I think a lot of people who are interested in the topic of Nolan should go about watching. It's by the Royal Ocean Film Society called Confessions of a Christopher Nolan Fanboy. And it kind of discusses the career of Christopher Nolan in comparison to other filmmakers like David Lean, amongst, I guess, the biggest one, and really just looks at what his work looks like now from what it looks like in the beginning, and then hopes for Tenet as well.
Definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, I would say so. Tenet, which is being released during these tumultuous times, I'd say, we will see, and you will hear about it.
And actually, we will see, won't we?
That is correct. As makers in our own destiny, we have secured tickets to see Tenet, with precaution, though.
Yes, we understand the risks of going to a movie right now with everything going on, but are trusting that precautions will be taken, and we would encourage everyone out there listening to, practice safe judgment,
social distancing,
and
all the precautions necessary. Luckily, this theater is doing something great. They're like sitting the groups together, however they want to be seated. Every other row will be empty, and then 2 seats between each group will also be empty. So I'd say I feel pretty comfortable with that. Plus, we bought a priority seating thing, so we get to be of like the first 20 some odd people in the theater and get to select where we sit. So I'm a little happier about that.
Yeah, it's definitely they're making it work. I'm more almost as interested, in Tenet itself as I am how Tenet's going to perform in the box office.
Me too.
With all these kind of what do you call them? Handicaps.
Yeah. I feel like it's going to be interesting. This theater's only doing 3 days of showings for Tenet, interestingly enough. But I think that's suited to the limited. I don't want to say that's because they can't, but just because they're one of the only theaters in our area showing it in IMAX 70 millimeter. And I feel like it's just limited because of that feature versus like, oh, we'll just put a regular digital screening that everybody can see, versus they have to move the film to other cities and other states. And yeah. But that'll be fun. You guys will hear about that. And I think that's really all the housekeeping I think I needed to bring up. Zach, do you have anything else yourself?
I don't think so. I think the one thing I will say is last episode, being our inaugural one, we were a bit on the indulgent side. We talked about 4 different movies from Christopher Nolan, and that ended up being a very long episode. And I think this time around we wanted to do something a bit more manageable, a bit more digestible. So we're just talking about 2 films, which
That's
we
true.
already spoke of before, Duel and Jaws. Aside from that, I got nothing. I think we should just bulldoze right into it.
Well, let's do it then. So I guess let's start at the beginning. 1971, Duel.
The year of, I don't know, 1971.
Come on, give me something.
Written by
Anything.
Richard Matheson. Give you
Yes.
the year that came after 1970.
I guess that works. With a budget of 450,000
Like
in
nothing.
1971. Yeah.
A real, just the definition of a micro budget.
I don't know. Robert Rodriguez made his first film for like under $10,000, and then Kevin Smith made Clerks for like $10,000.
That's true. That is very true. But this one, based on a short story written by Richard Matheson, who wrote I Am Legend, and he also wrote the screenplay for this. Box office returns none, because this was a TV movie of the week on ABC.
Right.
But you wouldn't know it by watching it. If someone told me on my first viewing that it was a feature film with all the production of a Hollywood movie, I'd believe them, because this movie is really well made.
That I would agree. Funny enough, I think about how it would play out in the box office. I don't know that it would be quite popular amongst regular audiences. I feel like a movie like this would have a cult following, and I feel like in a way it still does.
It absolutely has a cult following.
Yeah, like I mean, for like a TV film, I do want to add this little bit. I feel like we could give some sort of setup. Zach, what is Duel about? Would you say?
Duel is about a man named Man, and we'll get into that later. But his name's David Mann, and he is on his way to a business meeting that requires him to drive through the desert outside of, LA? And along the way, he encounters a large truck driven by a seemingly unknown truck driver.
A Peterbilt 281.
Oh, excuse me. And he decides to drive around this truck to get past it. It's driving a little slow. Its exhaust is getting in his face. It ends up being maybe the biggest mistake of his life, because then the truck haunts him across the desert, trying to kill him, trying to run him off the road. It's a very bare bones. It's a very bare bones concept, but it is milked to a surprising degree.
You would even say this is probably the most extreme version of road rage caught on camera.
It's right up there.
I feel when I watch this, I love how simple the idea is. And I kind of want to. I guess I'll jump right into it. There's this idea of some of these movies that came out around this time, or like in the mid to early 70s, about these men that would just have these weird not self-destructive journeys, but like really they'd have to look inside themselves as the outside worlds were just really testing them, pushing them to their limits. Something as simple as simple road rage. He's just going past this truck, and then the truck goes past him, and then they kind of battle for the road and try to run off each other and just do these weird performative moves. It drove this man to his absolute, I guess, his last straw, the last string in his brain. Like, there was nothing else. He had to overcome this. It's just quite interesting.
Yeah, it's a fun thing, not a fun thing, I suppose. It's a interesting note. Richard Matheson actually was inspired to write this when he had been driving. It was the day of JFK's assassination, and a truck was tailgating him really close. And I think that was his impetus for this kind of story.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel. I mean, how do you feel about the film as a whole, or what part do you want to look at?
I think it's great. I think it plays to that idea of you never know who you're driving by on the road. You never know who these people are.
It plays as like a nice cautionary tale, right?
Cautionary tale, but also, it's a bit of a Twilight Zone.
Oh, it's exactly that.
It's just this freaky situation, where, like, enough is withheld so that way your mind can kind of, draw its own conclusions. It's yeah, I think it's really interesting. Almost with both of these movies, I think the production of the movies is equally as interesting as the movies themselves. I think the production of this is really cool. How certain takes they got. How Spielberg only had one shot to get one chance to get several shots, so he lined cameras up along the route.
Yeah.
And got what he needed that way. It's real interesting. Another thing these movies share is themes, and I think the reason I wanted to not talk about Sugarland Express, even though it is a good movie, is that this movie and Jaws thematically deal with a lot of the same stuff. The fear of the unknown, the everyman who is faced with a kind of monstrous adversary, and kind of the idea of these less than idealized examples of.
It's not that they're inadequate. It's just that they're not your Arnold Schwarzeneggers,
right? They're not heroes,
or your Sylvester Stallones of your time, right? Exactly.
They are everymans, but in this, they both Mann and Brody, who we'll talk about later, kind of are formed fully. They become the man that they're supposed to be, I guess, by 1970s standards. But it's I find it funny that the character's name is Mann, Dennis Weaver's character. I joked last episode that I found
Matt Damon's character in Interstellar.
I felt that was a little on the nose in Interstellar, maybe because Interstellar has a lot more going on that it's not so much a concept film, whereas I feel this one is, where it is just the only characters that are of any consequence are Mann and the truck. Right. And so the fact that he is just a guy, he's just a man, and so his name's Mann, it kind of adds to that whole self-contained little short story feel it's got to it.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
No. Please finish.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and as we talk about it, we can talk how his whole struggle to become a man really plays into that.
What's funny about this? I just like there's a lot of this in the film, right? About the struggle, and it's not, it's a little more subtle. Like, so I want to take a look at a scene that happens kind of very early on, which is the driving early in the film. It's a really great shot too. This POV of the car going throughout the city, and then kind of like getting into like the outskirts, into the desert, like along these rips. And while Mann is driving the car, you hear like this radio, this conversation of this guy, and he's on the phone with the Census Bureau or someone trying to help him out. He's like, oh, well, I don't quite feel that the head of the house fits me. I stay at home. I do more of the cooking, the cleaning, and with my wife, all the things that are, instead of my wife who goes out and works and earns the money, like it's a gender reversal. I guess in this time versus back then, that was more seen as like, I guess, the roles of the house.
Right.
And so it's just kind of funny that you have this illusion and this man sitting in his car, like, who's this, like, laughing at this guy in a way, just kind of thinking there, like, there's something going on there. But later on, you see he gets on the phone with his wife, and she starts telling him about how she's uncomfortable. I believe, who was it? The neighbor was like touching her or something, or am I wrong? Or
she says he was practically raping me. And
oh my God.
And
It's just funny, like they do a really good job of like simple world building in a way, or character building without really showing us the characters. Which I find that Jaws does this thing too. I want to talk about show not tell later, but I just like this kind of characterization that we hear about certain actions.
I think a lot can be conveyed by how something is told.
Yeah.
In addition to what is being told, but just
Exactly.
the fact that she specifically says that she was almost raped,
Yeah.
maybe shows the severity of how it was or how she perceived it to be. But it definitely, it shows character, and also really demonstrates to the audience that man is he's kind of a pushover.
He is. I mean, when you look at him later on in the bar, and it's really like he's just kind of mulling over in his head these thoughts that he's talking. Like he thinks that one of these other patrons in the diner is the driver of this truck as he sees outside, and then he's really just kind of mulling over like, oh, how am I going to talk to him? Maybe this has got to end. I kind of found sympathy for this guy. Like I was really like thinking like, man, like I know I've done some of these. I've thought about these things before. Like, how do I just get myself out of this situation? Like, as a one pushover to another, like,
well, and then of course
I just thought it was great.
He tries to he finds a guy and he's like, this is got to be the guy, and he tries to be tough on him, and he tries to say, knock it off or we'll call the cops, and seriously, give it a rest, and the guy has no idea what he's talking about, which leads to a scuffle in which he is knocked to the floor, gets his ass kicked. Mm-hmm. Again, just really hammering home that emasculated feeling that this guy just can't be a man.
Yeah.
But I feel the best
in the traditional sense,
in the 1970s sense of what a man is.
It's funny. I think about that. I don't want to forget this, but it's like you look at this movie. The short story came out, I think, the year before or something like that, right?
I think so.
This was released in 1971, very of the time for us watching. But then you think about it, this thing came out. This was like everything looked like how it was for the audiences then. I think it's just interesting. It gives you some perspective, like of I was gonna say everything looks great. It looks just like the 70s, though I was never there. I'm like, but it was filmed then, like it's just super like
it's a period piece filmed in the period that it's set.
It's I don't know. It's just nice, like the look of the Plymouth. It's like that model or that like body style of like cars. Like I'm very reminiscent of it. My dad used to own a car like that.
Yeah.
And so it's really nice to see these things.
Yeah, I think though, talking about the Plymouth, I think there is one other instance where it's maybe the most direct, the most blatant scene where they're calling into question man's manhood.
Yeah.
And it's the school bus scene. Because I think, and I don't know if this was intentional, and I don't know if Spielberg just is was a real clever, just trickster back then. But, comes across a school bus, it can't move, and he's like, okay, let me see if I can give you a push with my Plymouth, and this Plymouth is too small and too weak to get the school bus up and running, which in and of itself is kind of funny in a tragic sort of way of like you can't even like push another car, you can't you can't even do that, and again, I don't know if this is just a thing I thought was funny with the hindsight of several years and in today's context, but the fact that his Plymouth then gets stuck and he's trying to wiggle it free, and he has the bus driver kind of bounce the front of it, and it's this very awkward, funny shot of the bus driver bouncing up and down on the hood almost like he is, humping it. And then when the truck shows up, man then steps on the hood and bounces up and down like with his like ass poking out. And it's so funny, and it really, you look at this guy and you're like, God, you poor dude.
You're really making a fool of yourself, especially in front of all these kids and this other guy. What I find interesting about the scene too is that he didn't even want to do that. He's like, you guys are gonna scratch my car, get the kids off. Like, my car can't push that and everything, which I find really interesting. So I do want to point out, though our last filmmaker was very much a writer as well as a director, I guess somewhat of a cinematographer, even though he has more professional cinematographers working with him.
Right.
Richard Matheson, I think, does a great job in terms of his character, or at least in just really making sure that we can see the differences. And so much so that, like, in the script itself, it's almost written as if it was like a shooting script, the one that we pulled out. He has ideas for like angles and like where the camera should be moving. Like, he puts these things in the script, which isn't necessarily normal. At least in this modern day, you wouldn't submit something like that to a studio and say like, oh, here, take the script. They have all the camera angles, because it's really for the director or someone to interpret these things. I want to talk about that in terms of Spielberg in a moment, but like, from this guy who's really sensitive about his car, getting scratched up and everything, to the, now that was at one point. The bus, I think, is the next major scene that really turns him. He's in the final battle with the truck at this point, and then he really kind of goes crazy, runs his car off like a cliff and jumps out, and all this great stuff, to the point where like he finally kind of grew a pair. He didn't care what his car looked like. It's just it was super satisfying to see and to just kind of feel this character finally like do something, and he's relieved. It's incredible in that sense. I you just kind of got to appreciate how it ends too, because it kind of ends there after the truck's death, and the guy's just there in the sand, just like finally relaxing. I always think, how's he gonna get home? He tore down the nearest phone that he was next to. I wonder what happens next.
Well, I always laughed because I think I first saw this movie when I was in high school. So long ago, and I remember, I think it was this movie and Cujo that I saw them pretty close together, and this was right after a teacher of mine had been complaining about all the kids on their cell phones in the middle class, and he said, I can't imagine one good scenario where a cell phone would be useful, and then I was like, well, here's two.
That would be, honestly, times they have changed.
But it's funny, you talk about the script and how it's like kind of a shooting script, and there's a lot of we get the point of view of the highway ahead, or we're looking toward the truck in the trailer.
There's a line even in the script in the very beginning, like the camera's like tilts and pan. Like the fact that it talks about tilting and panning and all these things, it's just it's just interesting to see like this is what they were kind of operating on later.
Well, I think what part of that being that if there wasn't that, if it was just lines and kind of like directions, I think this would probably be like a 40-page script.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it's one dude talking the whole movie, and a lot of his talking is just thoughts.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a 92-page script.
Well, if we take it like comparatively, we go back into our last filmmaker, Christopher Nolan, how he did Dunkirk. Dunkirk was 82 pages, and the majority of it just action lines, no camera angles, really, just like, but very specific actions of what like every inch of every character, every plane, the boats were doing, and how how the waves were moving.
And I think that that speaks to Spielberg being a very meticulous filmmaker, and
I agree
and
with that.
we'll talk about it more with the next film. But this is a dude who is in such complete control of his camera, and he knows exactly how to give just the exact amount of information that the audience needs without without making it seem like we're being like drip fed, I suppose.
Yeah.
I love, there are shots where we're looking up at the truck and it's this nice, like shot that's going around the truck, and the front hood of the truck comes up just as we're about to see into the driver's side window, just enough so it blocks it out. I think it's so great. It's you never get a clear view. The most you ever see of the dude is like his arm or his boot. And I feel like with a lesser director, we wouldn't get such creative shots because a lot of times it feels like the movie is almost teasing you.
So I do want to get into it then. Why not right now? Because
right here.
There was this documentary that came out in 2017 entitled Spielberg that was by, I believe her name is Susan Lacey. She produced and directed it.
What was it about?
It was about Steven Spielberg's life and career.
Get the hell out.
It's first of all, it's on HBO. If you haven't watched it or have a subscription, one, get a subscription to HBO Max. It's awesome. Two, watch the documentary if you're a fan of him or filmmaking in general, because there's just a lot of good things in there. But anyways,
great.
The documentarian, they interview Steven Spielberg throughout its entirety, and the way he talks about his relationship with cinematography, like with the camera, and how he thinks about composition. I hate, you tell me that you think that there's certain filmmakers that exist that could be really good cinematographers. Now, from my experience working on set, I don't agree with that to be true all the time. I think there's very rare exceptions. And I think Steven Spielberg is one of those exceptions, just given the fact that, like I said, like the way he thinks about composition, or like everything is just pictures to him. And at the same time, he's still able to, one, get his shots, and two, make sure actors' performances are, because that's the job of the director while they're shooting, is to make sure their performances are great. It's just really, I mean, he had to be born with it. I don't know if any other director could be doing something like that.
Well, I think the documentary really goes a long way to explaining that talent. This is something he was really fascinated in as a kid, and he really grew into it. And you see kind of the movies he made when he was younger, before he really broke into the industry, with the movies he made with his friends. Were utilized like real footage.
How they would do and then how they would build their own special effects and things like that.
Yeah,
it was fantastic.
It's a passion for him, and obviously that shows with his technique.
So I will say, though, I don't want to discount the work of Jack Marta, who was the director of photography for Duel, because Jack Marta, you look him up, he has well over 200 credits as a director of photography throughout the entirety of his career. His career spanned for I would say almost 50 years or something. It could have been a little less. I might be exaggerating. So, I mean, he obviously might have not needed so much help, but I can only imagine what someone with an eye like Steven, who works with somebody like that, and what they can kind of achieve together. I would just imagine it looks, there's some incredible work to be done. And even some things I feel like maybe even the documentary got wrong, or Spielberg might have even gotten wrong. One of my favorite shots in the film is probably when he gets to the diner. He walks in the bathroom, walks out. There's this one it's one take tracking shot of him walking in and out, and it's gorgeous. It's something you'd see in like Birdman now, like Alejandro Iñárritu's work, or
I really like that scene. It maybe is my favorite scene in the movie, basically from when he enters the diner to when he leaves. But specifically the shot where, and I realize it is a long tracking shot, but when he, he comes inside, he goes into the bathroom, he kind of
it looks like it's handheld. It's following him throughout the entire thing. And I do want to say the point where I think the documentary got wrong is he was talking about how his first bit of handheld work was later, I think in like, what was it, Schindler's List?
Schindler's List, yeah.
But I mean, like this, unless maybe he's talking about him specifically holding the camera. I mean, like I would consider this some of your earliest handheld work, guy.
But what I
I don't know.
what I love about that scene is where it that one shot at least where it ends as he's like walks out. He's like, all right, I'm gonna take a break. He goes to find a table, looks out the window, and what does he see? The truck has come back. It's stopped.
Oh my god,
that's
a great reveal.
It
right
is
there.
empty, and suddenly you get this amazing scene of a room full of people, and he's having to suddenly figure out, well, it's clearly one of them.
It's almost like a Western in that way, right? Like he enters the saloon and like, there's questionable characters all around him. Like it's kind of, I don't know. I found that like really like
it definitely,
really great looking.
It definitely has that vibe. I like that, no one person, with the exception of one person,
who left.
Yeah. And, that, actor wasn't even an actor. That was a stuntman. I believe his name was Kerry Lofton, and he was he was a stuntman. That is the person who the camera focuses on the most, and we see the most clear picture of out of all the men lined up on the bar. He did play the truck driver, but he is not the truck driver in that scene, because we get that other great scene of him leaving the cafe, walking over to the truck. He even kind of like swipes his hand on the fender and then walks past it. You think he's gonna climb in, and then he just drives a much smaller truck away. And it's a great red herring.
I enjoyed that a lot. I love the idea of like there were moments that if you really were to pay attention, I guess this is the taking out of the film part. Like you'd see a driver like in the cockpit, like very, you'd have to look very carefully. But the idea that like they didn't ever reveal this guy, all the tension that was kind of created, and I think that bar scene was really great. Or it's a bar, it's a diner, it's one of the two, and it's just I don't know. What did I write down here that was my favorite scene in the whole film? I felt like that shot was my favorite, but maybe the bar scene was
I think
second.
You had been talking about the phone booth scene.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about that in a bit, because talk about like that was just fantastic.
Well, what I like about this movie, and I having rewatched it for this podcast, up until that point, you really don't know what the truck driver, what his end game is, because as like right up until that phone booth scene, he kind of comes across as just a bit of an asshole, and he is he's definitely like he wants to ruin man's day.
Yeah,
but he's he hasn't done anything like insane yet. Like, well, yes, he has, but he hasn't tried to kill him yet. And then the phone booth scene comes up, and that's our first real like, oh, this guy is absolutely insane, and he is trying to kill him. This is no longer just some guy who's being a pest. This is an actual threat.
Yeah, we fast forward, like they have like one last encounter, and then man's able to kind of hide like on some sort of, not a cliff or something, but like he hides from the truck kind of goes by, and then he finds his way to like a little rest stop after the fact, I think.
A really weird rest stop.
Oh, it's like half attraction, half like, gas station, and just like kind of pop up, and just it's really funny. Like this I guess I could try to set the stage. The attractions are like reptile shows while also filling up your gas, and maybe there's a telephone and a bathroom around the corner or something like that.
It's just a bunch of snakes in boxes.
Exactly. And there was like an iguana, or I guess not an iguana.
An iguana. Hold on, an iguana that hisses. And as as a person who lives in Florida, I find that so funny.
Oh my god!
But
it's
okay.
This is hilarious. Because there's just so it's not that there's just so much going on, but it becomes more of like he gets in the phone booth, he's on the phone, he's about to call, and then out of nowhere, this truck comes and rams right into him. He escapes at the last second, as the hero would, and then it's just, oh, now all the attractions are being smashed together. Now the owner of the rest stop is frantic across the like her
The
property,
parking
like
lot, yeah.
exactly, like it's just there's so much chaos and everything going on. And like this poor lady was just trying to give him gas, maybe check his radiator. He's just trying to call the police, and like no, it went 0 to 100 in 2 seconds. And I'm like, talk about way to re-energize like the audience and everybody just into like this thing, like just with sheer chaos. These poor snakes, this poor lady, this guy just books it in his Plymouth and leaves her high and dry. She has to figure the rest of this out on her own. Like, oh my god,
it's pretty crazy, and I like that the movie. I don't know, again, intentional or not. The movie never really gives a concrete idea that anyone else is aware of what's going on except for man. And this is the movie's first real like acknowledgement that this isn't like all going on in man's head. This isn't like he's just misinterpreting things. This is like someone has witnessed this truck trying to kill him. And the threat becomes so much more real, which you also spoke to it. That's the second time that we get the I suppose if you want to call it the Chekhov's gun of the radiator hose.
Yeah.
He's told once when he's filling up with gas at the beginning, and then once here at this rest stop, and it ends up being
and like a factor into like his car's like kind of demise in a way.
Basically, the point of no return for him, because I think up until that radiator hose fails on him, I think he is set on just running away from the problem. He says to himself or to the driver, you can't beat me on the grade, and he's talking about when they're driving uphill, and he's getting away, and it's not until the radiator hose fails on him, and his car is pretty much foobar at that point that I think he accepts that this isn't something I can run away from. I have to face this challenge.
Yeah,
and it's a great we'll plant this now and it'll come back later moment.
I don't know. I just felt like it was really great. Like that. Talk about like a really interesting way to like build up this like just the little Easter egg, not Easter eggs. Just like these are the breadcrumbs in the movie. Like. These details that I feel I really appreciate, like as looking at writing and just like looking at, kind of a little more subtle factors into things. Like it's kind of classic in a way, people see this, but I really appreciate things like that.
Yeah, and of course that leads us to the final stand, the standoff at the edge of the cliff. Man has finally had enough. The truck goes down. The broken radiator hose ends up, I think, playing to man's benefit in that it kicks up enough smoke that the truck driver cannot see and ends up barreling off the side of the cliff. And what we get is maybe the most restrained car crash scene ever put to film. Maybe. Don't quote me, but Spielberg fought really hard not to have this truck explode, and I think it was absolutely the right choice. Yeah,
the slow death really. I mean, this is not a Hollywood action film in a way. This was a made-for-TV movie in that sense. So I feel like in a way there's a bit of a differentiation in terms of the audience.
But the executives wanted it to explode. They said, you're going to have this big truck. It's got the word flammable written on the side. How you're not going to have it explode? Go back, reshoot it.
But no,
he said
did not.
It's all about this truck. It's practically alive. It's a beast in of itself, and we need to show it dying. We show the wheels slowly stop spinning and
the oil slowly dripping out and everything. Yeah, it's really nice picture actually, to be honest. Like looking at this.
it's this last gasp of a dying creature, and like, the fact that we always see the word flammable, and when it doesn't explode, it really feels like man has conquered this thing completely.
Yeah.
It doesn't even get to go out in a blaze of glory. It goes out like a whimpering, like, wounded animal.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's Duel.
I would like to point out there's a couple things about this film. One, in that last scene, I just love it that when you see the kind of truck go down, the cabin doors open. If there was a driver, which I said earlier, you could kind of see the driver in some shots, like he jumped out. What is this?
I'll tell you this. Originally, Carrie Lofton was not supposed to be in the truck when it went over, but the mechanism that they had in the truck that would basically push, accelerate it forward off the cliff failed on them, so he had to be in the truck when it went over.
Oh my god! You see, that's what I love. I love that. That's great information right there. People, I don't know. I feel like you could miss it easily, but just knowing something like that makes it a little more worth it. I guess makes me a little more happy about it. Another thing I did want to go back and mention was how I loved the conversation at the beginning of the movie. Like it was like the radio, I guess, conversation between the census person and the man was listening to in the car. It just, the kind of writing in there, it was very reminiscent of something that I've heard when driving around playing Grand Theft Auto or something like that. Like any Rockstar game,
Speaking of Grand Theft Auto, you informed me there's a reference to Duel in GTA 5, right?
In Grand Theft Auto 5, yeah. On the PS4 and Xbox One version specifically, there is actually an event that if you go to a specific area on the map, you can trigger the event where like one truck will go after you, and like it won't stop following you and it'll try to just kill you. And then if like you keep going and it's still going, another truck will follow you, and they were both inspired by Duel.
That's pretty great.
Now I want to bring up the ending of Duel again later on, but I do want us to kind of move on to what Spielberg's biggest, I guess, one of his greatest accomplishments were.
Sugarland Express. No, we may talk about Sugarland Express another day. I think the only thing that I want to bring up right now about it is his first collaboration with John Williams. One of the greatest composers in film, and
of times continuing. That man continues to do great work.
Responsible for some of the greatest movie soundtracks of all time. But we'll save Sugarland Express for another day. We're going to talk about the big one at the time. It was an unprecedented success. And I'm
Jaws.
I'm sure when they were making this, and I think they say it in the documentary, but I think they were expecting this to just be a massive failure. Just like Duel, I think the production of Jaws is almost equally fascinating as the movie itself.
In the documentary, I think that when they cover Jaws, so like in the first 15 minutes, like from minute 1 to 15, it's like that's what they focus on. So at least watch it for that.
And it is, God, they had gone twice over budget and double the. I
think that it went from like, I don't know how many shooting days to like 150. Like it was like something small. Like
they were supposed to,
like 30.
Tiny short schedule for a major Hollywood film. But this movie was a smashing success. It didn't coin, but the term blockbuster was created to describe this film.
As it was the first film to ever reach over $100 million in the American box office.
And also because people were lined up around the block to do it, to go see it. I mean, it's funny if you look at it now, you might, with 2020 eyes, you might be able to like look, and say like, well, that's not as good as it could have been, but like for its time,
You see, I'm going to have to disagree with that statement, but I'm not saying I'm a cinephile, but this is actually, I'm not saying that at all, because this is my very first time ever watching Jaws.
Gasp.
I know. I told that to my dad, and he actually sent me the novelization as well.
And
Like,
he said, "You're no son of mine."
No, he kind of regaled me with really nice stories that he had reading the novel when it came out, and then just other fun, stories as he was growing up in the 70s. But going into that, having read like a couple of chapters of the book, which was actually written very well, I think, by Peter Benchley, who helped write part of the script as well. It was super, super good. I can't believe it took me this long to watch this movie. Same thing with Duel. First time ever watching Duel. So
I've seen Jaws. I don't even know how many times. And maybe that's why I have more of an eye for like where I see certain technical hiccups and stuff. But that's not to say that this movie is poorly made. It is an exceptionally well made film. I think this movie is the best example of, when things don't go your way, improvise.
yeah,
Spielberg has said
in both its production and in the story.
Yeah, exactly. Spielberg has said, the script and, when they were working on the movie, the shark was supposed to be all over the place, but the animatronic shark that they had for it, for the production, which was nicknamed Bruce, it hardly worked, and they had to be a bit more creative with that, and that's where we get the POV shots, and we get the barrels, and all these really cool things. We get John Williams' score.
I guess we've been quoting the doc for a while, but in there, Spielberg talks about how he stole something from Hitchcock in that way, that maybe what you don't see tends to be more frightening than what you do see from time to time.
Like a truck driver that you can never get quite the good look at. So, this shark is quite the menace throughout the movie, and you don't see him until the 4th of July.
I do want to, before we get into it, I'm going to give a brief synopsis of Jaws.
Oh, yeah, for anyone who doesn't know what the movie Jaws is about.
Exactly, right. So, this comes to us from Wikipedia. When a young woman is killed by a shark while skinny dipping near the New England tourist town of Amity Island, Police Chief Martin Brody wants to close the beaches, but Mayor Larry Vaughn overrules him, fearing that the loss of tourist revenue will cripple the town. Matt Hopper and grizzled ship captain Quint offer to help Brody capture the killer beast, and the trio engage in an epic battle of man versus nature.
And there you go. And what's interesting is, usually when I would watch Jaws, it'd just be like, it would be on TV, I'd catch it, I'd watch it, and I never really paid attention to the runtime of this movie, and it's so interesting because...
Isn't it like 2.5 hours or something
it's
like that?
2.5 hours, and I think the structure of this movie is really interesting because it, being about 2.5 hours, 50 minutes is all that is spent on the boat. So less than half the movie is on the boat, which is the most iconic and what I would consider the most, fun to watch part of the movie.
Yeah.
Is just that last, less than half the movie. Not saying that the stuff on the mainland is not interesting. It is. But I think, there's so many... for a movie that is, all about, these guys hunting the shark, the movie donates a lot of time to setting that whole thing up.
I was going to say, I feel like what the film does in its separation of its parts, I really feel like the characters in this film speak, a lot. Not speak a lot, but they really do provide you with a good sense. This movie isn't just a good movie because of its, its iconic shark attacks and things like that. But the characters in this movie are actually really well-written characters. I think that I was really attracted to Richard Dreyfuss's character, Matt Hooper.
Oh, you mean like sexually attracted to him?
No, but like just like as these characters just kind of progress and you know their idiosyncrasies and things of the sort, like they're just really entertaining to watch. You know, between just the arguments, the things they say to each other, or their actions. It's just I never realized, you know, this being my first time watching it and just hearing about this movie for years, like I never realized how entertaining the writing of this movie was, and the fact that the movie itself, the majority of it was that. I was really happy with my viewing experience, because I felt like I didn't just go into this movie just to see shark attack. Let's blow it up or whatever. Like I got well-written characters, good story, really good character arcs, and some great background.
What I like about the characters, and you know, this is not exclusive to Jaws. It's actually it's a thing where I always like to see you take a group of characters, and just for the sake of just the most prominent characters in the movie being Brody, Hooper, Quint, and Vaughn. Each one of them is presented with the same problem, and each one of them handles it completely differently.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see all those different problem-solving techniques kind of bounce off each other.
See them fail one by one by one.
Yeah, until all that's left is a tank of compressed gas. But
There you go.
yeah, I just think, you know, the writing is really interesting. The introductions to each character are awesome. Quint's first appearance in like when they're meeting with everybody in town, and he scratches the board and he gives this great monologue about what it's going to take to kill this thing. And
Yeah.
I love that whole thing. You know exactly who this guy is from the word
Yeah,
go.
he's like the island weirdo, you know, like everybody looks at him, he's just like the creepy guy. He would be that character, you know, and I didn't realize that this movie had one of those, you know, which was super. I mean, it was just great, you know. In a way, it's kind of campy, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like, but I was in love with it from the moment I saw his nails go on the board. I'm like, oh, it's one of those. Like
Hooper, you know, Hooper is like this. He's a, you know, college boy. He's really smart. He's rich, and he's not afraid to say that he's rich. And I think, you know, he's got soft hands and stuff, and he's really the antithesis to Quint.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, that, you know, presents some pretty good comedic and character moments.
Well, I would say even before, I mean, between them, yes, but even before then, like just his interactions with Brody. I don't want to say Brody's the straight man. You know, he's just like he's very paper thin in his characterization. I don't necessarily want to say that, but it's like he's kind of like Man in Duel, in the sense that it's like they don't have complete control over everything. You know, like Brody, though he's the police chief, he needs a lot of help kind of, you know, regulating the rules of Amity, you know, like dealing with its people. He doesn't have a lot of help, especially during this busy time of the year for them. The tourists come in every 4th of July or so on. And it's just, it causes a problem for him. And now he has like the stress of his wife and his kids and all these things that he also has to worry about. And so you introduce this guy like Matt Hooper, you know, like who's exactly what Brody wanted to come in after the first 2 shark attacks. You know, like he comes in and then he's like, all right, where can I find Chief Brody? He's like, oh, hang on. I need you to talk to these people off getting off this boat before they get killed or something. They have too many people. He's like, yeah, they're all going to die and they wouldn't get off the boat. Also, I'm Matt Hooper. He's like, you're the guy I need. Like, oh, it's great.
I think, yeah, you know, if you get if you put it in a spectrum, you have Hooper on one end, you have Quint on the other, you have Brody kind of like smack dab in the middle. He's not as much of a scientist as Hooper.
He's not as exaggerated, I would say. Like,
right.
You know, like he's very like,
well,
yeah, I think you put it great right in the middle between the two of them.
He's an audience surrogate. He is, you know, he has very passing understanding of sharks, whereas Hooper is more scientific, and he addresses the sharks by their Latin name, and they're
And
like,
he's also a little snotty too,
of
like
course.
and I guess that kind of way it kind of comes with the territory, like
And
it's not that like it's stereotypical for someone to be smarter, that like they're going to talk like they're better than everybody else, but it just, he follows that trope in that way, but not to his detriment, I don't think, because like you said, it does bring up some really great character moments between him and the townspeople, or like him and Quint, and just I don't know, it really it makes the trio a really wonderful mix.
Yeah, and I think with Brody, while he's not as like, I feel like, out there, and he doesn't have as wildly defined a personality as Quinter Hooper. What I feel is, yeah, so he has that kind of thing like Man, where he's not, I feel like, not as much of like a 70s idealized man as he should be, especially for someone who's in a authority position.
Another period piece filmed in the time of which it was happening.
but also he I think his whole character arc is, or at least one aspect of it, is his coming to see Amity both as his home and something worth protecting, because at least I haven't read the book, but I know in the movie they haven't even lived in Amity for a year.
There's a conversation that his wife has with some of the other neighbors that like, oh, you're not an islander, you just weren't born here,
right?
Like, you can't just become one when you move here.
They're making, at the beginning he's making fun of the accents, and he's he doesn't like to swim, and he goes to the beach, and when when the old man comes to talk to him, he makes fun of the old man's like swimming cap and stuff, and he's really not like he doesn't like the town all that much, I felt, right. And or at least he hasn't warmed up to them yet, and I don't think, really take him too seriously, as evidenced by the fact that he is trying to get everyone out of the water and there's a shark and no one listens to him.
Yeah.
But and it's when his son is put in very real danger when the shark comes and attacks on 4th of July that I think he finally realized, puts on his
bootstraps, and he really gets to work.
He says to his wife right then and there, he's like, take the boys home, and when she's like, oh, you mean back to New York? He's like, no, I mean here. This is become his home. He's going to defend it by any means necessary.
Yeah.
And then
I don't know. I would agree. I feel like Brody's kind of like his come up, if you will, into like, taking matters into his own hands after the failure of all of these other antics. I think it's a testament. It differentiates itself from something like Duel, because this one's still a little more calculated. It's not like he's still been driven to the breaking point, but he still has his head on his shoulders. He still has like a support system around him. He's not doing this alone,
right?
Which is why he bands together with this expert fisherman and
scientist.
A science man, if you will.
A science man. Professional science man.
Honestly, Richard Dreyfuss is... he's my favorite character in this whole movie. And I know a lot of people find him so annoying, at least from people that I've talked to. But it's just... Richard Dreyfuss's performance of him really... It resonates with me so well. Not because I feel like I can relate to him, but like he's just very entertaining on screen. He's a classy guy. He shows up to the house and brings wine, but he takes your steak dinner or whatever it is.
I think Richard Dreyfuss, just, you can tell he's having fun with it.
Yeah,
and I think that's infectious. Then on the contrast, you get Quint, and we don't really know much about Quint for a big, beefy part of the movie. He shows up at the meeting, and then he's just kind of in the background for a lot of it, and the movie goes on for a very long time, and then they go out to sea, and then we get to the scene at night, they're in the cabin, and they are, joking around and having kind of like a dick measuring contest about their scars. And
But
then
you're gifted the introductory moment between, or I guess the true introduction between Hooper and Quint, when they're able to relate to one another. Like, oh, you were bitten by a shark, I was bitten by a marlin, or just all these things, and they're it's because there's still smiles all around, like, and then he brings up this story about how he got one other marking on him.
Yeah, and then it goes into probably one of the best monologues ever in film, talking about the day the USS Indianapolis sank, and him being on board, and the this horror story of 11,000 men going into 11,000 men would be kind of insane. 1,100 men going into the water, no help coming because it was a secret mission, and just them just being attacked by sharks. I know I've quoted the line, the shark, it's got black eyes like a doll's eyes. That's really great stuff. And just the way he tells it, like you mentioned before, it's a lot of tell don't show.
But but not in a bad way.
It's not what he says, it's how he says it.
Exactly. And even like the complimentary aspects, like how the slow push in from the camera, like onto him, like, and Robert Shaw's performance, it's like, oh my God, it's chilling in that way.
It's fantastic. And of course, I love when he says, I'll never put on a life jacket again. It almost gives you chills. And I love that scene, and I think the perfect kind of cap off to it. And if I'm remembering correctly, it's right after that monologue. And you see the barrel pop up from the water outside, and it's this kind of this phantom threat, this phantom menace, if you will.
Yeah,
that's what a phantom menace is. Don't worry, we'll save that for another day. But you just get this, it's out there.
The tension, like there's already tension, a different kind of tension that's being built in terms of his story. And now you're returning back to the tension of the film, this thing still hasn't gone away. Just because they're sharing this brief moment of storytelling and character building doesn't mean the real danger won't just reappear. And in our lovely cold open, we talk about fear and how Spielberg kind of has capitalized on this really great idea or just this really great technique of implementing fear and tension into this film. Really, it just works so well.
Yeah, it's really great.
How it was all pieced together.
And then when you finally do get the shark, when you finally do see it for the first time, well, I won't say for the first time. First time you see it, I really like, because that's it's at the 4th of July celebration, and the only thing you see of it is you just see part of it underwater going under some of the boats, and it's a great chilling moment of oh crap, there it is, But when Brody is chumming the water and that thing just pops out, fantastic. It's fantastic. And of course the famous line, you're gonna need a bigger boat, was improvised.
Yeah, but I mean, talk about some of the many great lines that improvisation has called for. That, I don't know. I feel like that was a great moment. The fact that it was captured, because I think it changed the angle and everything, and then he delivered the line.
Yeah,
or he added it to what they were saying. I forget if that was the only line delivered at that time.
I think it speaks to Spielberg that he's willing to find these moments and say, okay, no, that's actually better. He does that a few times in some of his other films. But yeah, I just think it's this movie really just does a great job of mounting that tension and getting you really drawn in, and the anticipation is just it's palpable. And then at the end, I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but kind of the contrast to Duel, the shark explodes.
So it's not that's kind of awesome, I mean, it is when you look at the ending, like, or like, I guess, like, how they're going to end up defeating this shark, knowing that the ship is sinking, the shark has broken through, and they're kind of like on their last stand. What are they going to do? So the ending being right now, I mean, as it is, Hooper has been not lost at sea, but like he was in a shark cage. The shark cage sank, and the shark got through it, and he kind of went to save himself, dropping his spear of poison. Quint was unfortunately eaten alive, and then it's up to Brody, who managed to get the shark to not swallow, but like kind of poke an air container into his mouth, and then shoot it, causing a lovely explosion of seafood lunch for anybody interested. But it's like it is in stark contrast. That is the Hollywood, explosion that Duel never got, right?
And I feel like at least for me, while it technically, and Mythbusters proved this, it would have been more realistic if it hadn't exploded, because a tank like that wouldn't explode if you shoot it. Would it have been more realistic if it didn't explode? Yeah. But I feel like it is the perfect catharsis after all that tension. It is such a great release, when Brody's like, "Smile, you son of a," and then he shoots.
So you feel like, so that's more fitting for this type of movie in its situation versus the Duel type of ending.
I will say this. I haven't read Jaws. I know what happens in the book, and I know how the shark dies and that, and I think it just kind of dies from some injuries, which maybe in a book that works, but in a movie, especially when tension has been mounting, and in the span of a few minutes, you're getting like the complete destruction of the orca, and Quint is dead, and we don't know what's going on with Hooper, and Brody's on his last, he's hanging on to the mast, and the ship is sinking, and what can you do? And I think at that point tension is so high that when you take the cap off of it, it can only explode. And I think it's this great release. It's this great, triumphant moment of like, it's like a fireworks display.
Is it the denouement of the film?
The denouement, I think, would be Brody and Hooper swimming back.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. I try not to apply too many
of these terminologies and things that exist.
The storytelling triangle to it, but
I mean, just listening to Spielberg himself, like, talking about how he defended the end of Duel and really wanted to then do something, his first real major motion picture, like that he had been working on. He was only 26, 27 years old,
something like that, yeah.
Like, and to not kind of bring the same kind of, I guess, fight for the ending as well. I mean, not that maybe he wanted it. Maybe he's like, I did the slow ending in the other one. I'll do the cool ending in this one. I mean, he doesn't talk about that necessarily in this, but it just seems a little fishy to me. But at the same time, like I get it. Like, it was cool. It was awesome. Like it was the great release of tension. It's just, I find that, they put all this build up to to Hooper, like in the cage, and he's hiding underwater, and then, he resurfaces, and, it gives Brody some sort of relief and stuff. But I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess he, maybe I just grew too attached to him as a character, and I just wanted him to succeed.
How
in the
dare
mission.
you? How dare you?
As a man of science, he wanted to study the shark, probably, cut it over something. So, to poison it would have been great, but he would have had no ship to bring it in. So
yeah,
that's something
true.
else.
Here's a fun fact. I don't know where I saw this. I don't know if I read this on IMDb or some other thing, but the sound clip of the truck from Duel when it goes and crashes at the end, it almost makes like an animalistic roar sound. It was some sample that they used in the final version of that movie. And that same sound actually plays as the carcass of the shark is sinking into the water.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a little touch. You can catch it. It's not like right when the shark dies. It's like, as it's like corpse is sinking down, you just hear it very faintly, but it is there.
That's pretty good.
Yes, it's quite the accomplishment. This movie really changed how movies were made, how movies were viewed in the scope of like consumable media, because suddenly films could, summer films could be the thing everyone's talking about, and I think its legacy is substantial. It's I know that's my real big hot take.
Sure.
But obviously there was some weird fallout from this movie. Shark hunting became a really big thing following this movie.
Yeah,
a lot of sharks were killed.
An unforeseeable I feel like though we may look at it as an unforeseeable consequence, I just feel like, maybe it could have been prevented. I feel like, in a way, like they could have thought, but I mean, who really does that? What is it? Hindsight is 2020.
Yeah,
right?
And I mean, maybe nowadays people would really think ahead on that sort of thing, but I think back then, because this was such an unprecedented success, I think they probably didn't even consider that was something that could have happened.
Well, yeah. So funny enough, I do want to bring this up because I think that there is a mention of it, especially coming from the writer Peter Benchley.
Yeah.
Benchley, right? Am I saying that right? So in reading this edition of the novel that I have, the updated introduction discusses a bit of the Jaws film process, as if you're a viewer of the film and then coming to the novel trying to figure out, oh, what is Jaws also about? And he does talk about how, he never realized that was going to happen. And in a way, he's kind of changed his career, from, writing in a way to now, or I'm not sure about what he's doing right now, but into kind of the protection of sharks and into like oceanography and becoming an ocean activist, which I found like really like, he's really kind of switched gears, and it's really nice to see somebody in a way taking responsibility for his actions.
Yeah. He, he inadvertently caused a bit of a problem, and he didn't just sit by and let it happen. He owned up to it and tried to, improve the situation. Yeah. So I mean, a minor. I don't know if I would call it minor. An issue that arose, but was thankfully not something that takes away from the enjoyment of the film.
Yeah.
Speaking of,
I did look it up. I do want to mention it. He actually passed away in 2006, the age of 65. But at least, he did something while he could. So, because he didn't want to leave behind a bad legacy.
Also, I could be wrong. I'll look in the cast and crew. I'm pretty sure it's either him or Carl Gottlieb who worked on the script as well. But one of them is a reporter in the movie On the Beach, and I can't find it. But yeah, so I mean, overall, just fantastic movie. Do you have a favorite scene or a favorite shot?
Well, yeah, my favorite scene by far has to be, my favorite shots would have to be one of the ones where Captain Quint is in the pseudo crow's nest of the orca, and Brody's kind of complaining about like shoving Chum off, and he wants to switch jobs with Hooper, and you get this like lovely silhouette of Quint, the angle of Brody looking up, of Quint just up in the sails, just like up in the highest point of the ship, like, and with all these like the clouds in the sky behind him, I was like, oh,
Yeah, he's silhouetted.
he looks pretty cool up there. Yeah, he just looked awesome. But my favorite scene by far is Brody's introduction, the chaos happening as the townspeople. Hooper's introduction. Thank you for the correction. The town's in complete disarray as everybody's trying to get on the docks. They're trying to go shark hunting, and he's just like, you guys got too many people. You gonna get off? He's like, no, or whatever they say. He's like, oh, you know where I can get a good bite into town?
Yeah, walk forward.
Yeah, you just go that way. It's like, you're all gonna die. And then just the sarcasm there. Funny enough, it kind of reminds me of Uzak in that way, or just like the kind of things I've heard you say before. So that's my favorite scene. He's my favorite character.
I gotta say the cabin scene out on the water, them comparing the scars, and then the USS and Indianapolis is probably my favorite scene. My favorite shot, though, hands down, is when the Orca is heading out to sea and it is leaving the port of Amity, and you get this wonderful shot of Amity framed through the jaws of a shark. And it's this great, like, kind of like, oh my god, this town is gripped in the jaws of it. But yeah, that's my favorite shot in that. I thought it was pretty clever, pretty great. This movie had 3 sequels, and none of them are good.
I haven't even seen any of them.
You know what? You're better off that way. The only good thing that came out of the Jaws sequels was the tagline for Jaws 2, which was just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. And yeah, it's snappy. It's too bad the movie sucks. But
well, I heard that they got back. They brought back some of the characters though. I don't think
Brody's in the second one.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure his obviously Quint's gone, but
I think Spielberg's complaint of why he wouldn't go back is because he didn't like the idea of doing sequels.
Right.
Of things.
Lorraine Gary, she does come back as Ellen Brody. She is actually in the fourth one, Jaws: The Revenge, and in that, I mean, these movies got so terrible, but like by the fourth movie, she has like a psychic connection with a shark and stuff, and it's laughably terrible.
Right.
But the other part of the legacy of Jaws that I think is really just the best thing to touch on is all the rip-offs that got spawned because of it.
My favorite one most recently was probably The Meg.
The Meg, so like I would say The Meg is...
Just because Jason Statham and Rainn Wilson.
So like I would say The Meg, and really any movies like Deep Blue Sea,
Piranha, or something like that.
I would say those movies are far enough removed that they can just be kind of like categorized as shark movies. But I'm talking, okay, so Jaws comes out in 1975, immediate success. It's massive. No other film like it. You know how like when Avengers came out and then suddenly everybody wanted a connected universe, a cinematic universe?
Right.
Well, everyone wanted Jaws money. So in 1976 we get Grizzly. In 1976 also we get Mako, Jaws of Death.
Oh no.
In 1977 we get Claws, another bear.
What is that one about?
It's about about a bear, yeah. Also 1977 we get Orca. Orca is probably like the most well-known of the Jaws ripoffs. It's about a killer whale. And I think it was very purposeful because the ship is called Orca in Jaws. And but that movie starred Richard Harris and was scored by Ennio Morricone.
Lovely.
That year we also get Tentacle. 1978 we get Piranha, and we get The Swarm, which stars Michael Caine.
What about Talon? That would be a good one.
1980 we get Alligator, we get Blood Beach, we get Tintoera, Killer Shark, and then We get in 1981 we get The Last Shark, Great White, which was directed by Enzo G. Castellari, who directed the original Inglourious Bastards.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny because these were just, it was so blatant. It was such a insane, like, blatant ripoff of the Jaws, formula that they're pretty funny just in concept.
I was gonna say, did a lot of these movies make money? Is the question.
I don't know off the top of my head, but they're definitely creatively bankrupt as far as I'm concerned, because they're just it was just shameless cash grabs, chasing a really big hit.
Yeah. Well, such is movies today.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and this is something I spoke to you about, and I'm not going to claim this idea. It's something that's been going around for a while now, especially being that this year is the 45th anniversary of Jaws, so Jaws has been kind of popping up a lot in discussion. But right now, there is a global health pandemic, COVID-19, and
which we're in I don't even know how many months into it we are at this point.
Did you know it's like, dude, it's like 8 days until September.
Oh my god.
But a lot of people have been kind of looking to Jaws and seeing what's going on right now and getting a real weird sense of life imitating art. Because you get in Jaws, you have this very real threat. It's killing people, and you have Mayor Vaughn, the leadership, the governance, who is basically
not really doing much about it,
trying to ignore the problem, hope it goes away, for the sake of keeping their economy afloat, and not wanting to scare people.
Right.
And just really not wanting to have to bother with it.
I think you should put a disclaimer, as we are an American-made podcast.
Yes.
It's very much, at least right now, seems like an American issue.
And I'm not going to get political here because I don't want to debate politics, but I think it goes without saying that the leadership in this country could have had a much better response to this very real threat that is killing people. And I just find it fascinating how many parallels there are between what is happening today in the world and what's going on in this movie, even down to Brody and Hooper confronting Vaughn and saying look, this is real. There is an actual
danger. If only we could band together and find the source of this thing and just shoot it from afar.
And blow it up. I want
in a spectacular fashion.
I wanna explode coronavirus. But
yeah. I will say though, funny enough, I did find this piece of information that in June of this year, most obviously theaters have been closed for a while now, and except there's some theaters that are around worldwide, at least drive-ins, if you will, they're playing Jaws, and Jaws has played in at least 187 of them and still made over $500,000. Just this year alone, $500,000. I gotta say that's pretty impressive. Especially this movie re-released, but this is a classic too.
Yeah,
this would make money. But the fact that they're showing it in this time should also speak kind of volumes. I hope people really take a look at this. The people that did see it, they see the ending, or they see the mayor of this town and just all the other leadership and see oh, this looks really familiar.
Yeah, hopefully this is anyone who
a wake-up call.
Anyone who's coming into this movie for the first time, I hope they can see it for the bit of a cautionary tale that it is, and they can apply the wisdom of the main characters to decisions they make in the real world. But with that, I don't know. I don't think we have anything left to say.
I would just like to say, these movies in a way are a separation between two things. I said this earlier. Steven Spielberg, he's an incredible filmmaker and has a wonderful visual eye. We talk about characters a lot, not characters that he wrote specifically, but like he didn't ignore the writing from Peter Benchley or as well as from before with Duel,
Richard Matheson.
Richard Matheson, he helped elevate their characters into something better. Like as he kind of led the teams, I just feel like we talk about these things, and it's important to remember like they all kind of coincide with each other, and they all have a lot of value. And as we continue to explore the rest of his filmography, I just hope people would get that not everybody does everything. Though Christopher Nolan is very writer director in that sense.
Yeah,
Steven Spielberg is I feel like he's known for producing a lot of things. He really takes control of the set and just the way that things look and visual aesthetics, his composition, and of that sort.
Right. Yeah, I think it takes a village, as they say, and depending on who that is and who's in the captain's seat, if you're a Nolan, you might want to have full control of everything. If you're a Spielberg, you're more of a collaborator, and I think that's what's so great about it. A
curator of well-to-do talent.
Exactly.
I think with that being said, this is another edition of Script or Screen.
Yeah, I think maybe this could be the first entry in our Spielberg series. Not saying the next episode will be about Spielberg, but we'll probably get around to covering his stuff and maybe working our way down the line through his filmography, getting into some more absolutely amazing films.
Absolutely. And with that, I want to thank you for joining us, Zach. And I want to give a special shout out again to our editors, Billy, and the music in our lovely intro and outro by Nick G.
Thank you, guys.
Check us out at Script or Screen on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we will see you next time.
Bye.